Hello and welcome to this week's episode of For the Love of Chiropractic, 3 Keys of My Success. On this week's show, I get to talk to a doctor who grew up in chiropractic. No, his dad wasn't a chiropractor, his mom wasn't a chiropractor, but his mom worked in the chiropractic office. So as a child, he and his dad would go and get adjusted all the time. So he saw what this chiropractic thing could really do. And now as a NUCA specialist with a large practice, he's agreed to share his 3 keys of success so everybody can become more successful in their own practices. I hope you enjoy this interview with Dr. Terry McCoskey. Hello and welcome to Secrets of My Success, part of For the Love of Chiropractic podcast series. On each episode, I'll be interviewing one highly successful doctor or business person, asking them what are their 3 keys of success or secrets they've used to make themselves so highly successful. So let's get started with today's show. I have the pleasure of having on the phone with me today Dr. Terry McCoskey. Terry, are you there?
I am there. Yes, thank you.
I am so glad you could make the time for us to get together and record this for everybody. And so as we get started, I got to ask you, so how many years have you been in practice?
This is officially my 35th year. I graduated way back in the 1900s in 1989. So this is my 35th year in the game.
And where did you graduate from? I'm just curious.
From the Palmer College of Chiropractic in Davenport, Iowa.
Nice. I was just there over the summer. My daughter is actually down at Palmer, Florida, and we decided to take a summer trip to go out and see the Fountainhead and see what it's all about out there. It was a very cool trip.
It is a very special place. It is a special place on the planet, no doubt about it.
Absolutely. So tell me about your path. So how'd you become a chiropractor, and then we'll transition from there.
Well, everybody has, as you know, everybody has their story, and some of them are going to be pretty similar. My mom was a staff person in a chiropractic office when I was in the 4th grade. And so my brother and my dad and I all started under chiropractic care as a result of her employment. And then I knew by 7th grade, I knew that was going to be my thing for the rest of my natural life. He did not tell me about the big idea. He didn't tell me about the miracles of healing. He didn't tell me about how the universe is wired. But I saw in him, and he had a very simple practice. His practice was in the ground floor of a house. And then he and his family lived in the upper level of that house. And this is back when I would walk home from school, and I would usually kind of finish my mom's workday just kind of in his reception space. And so I would get to listen to people coming and see people coming and going. And I knew that he didn't use drugs or surgery. I knew that there was no blood involved. I knew, because I don't do good with any of that. I knew he set his own hours. He didn't keep everybody. If he couldn't help them, he didn't keep them. I don't know. He had a great life. What I knew by junior high school is I wanted his life. And he seemed to make a decent living for himself and his family. He was serving people in a way that seemed congruent with his heart. And I thought, yeah, I want that for myself as a grown-up. I never looked into anything else.
That is so cool, man. I hope everybody should want a life like that. I mean, it's just beautifully fulfilling, and that is amazing that you had that experience as a young person. So
yeah, it was a delight.
So finished high school, finished college, went to Palmer, as you mentioned, and
yes.
and then what happened? So you crossed the stage. Congratulations, you're now doctor. What happened next?
Well, interestingly enough, and just like everybody else in chiropractic, you got to be a little bit of a renegade, I think, to be in chiropractic. I was married. My wife and I were only married for 2 months before we moved from Columbus, Ohio to Davenport, Iowa. So we actually grew up into our married life. I've been married to the same woman now for 38 years, which is wild. You know, when you invited me for this show, I realized that I have been married longer than I haven't. And I have been a chiropractor longer than I haven't.
Yep.
And when I look at the blessing that my life is, it is just, we have been so richly blessed. But I planned on opening my own shop. And she and I went to Palmer with no children, and we left Palmer with 2 children. So I had a couple of extra mouths to feed, and I had a little more incentive to maybe perhaps become an associate in a practice where I could start generating revenue right away and not necessarily build something from the ground up. We were very fortunate. I met a guy here in Ohio who was practicing with the technique that I wanted to practice. We can talk about that if you'd like.
Yeah,
But,
please.
he was practicing NUCA. He had an upper cervical practice primarily. And so he and I met at a state association's convention here in Ohio, and we got to talking, and I asked if I could come and shadow him for a day, and he said yes. And by the time I left his office that day, I knew that's where I was going to land. And he was very gracious. He was a wonderful mentor to me. He and I worked together for 5 years, and then I purchased the practice, and then a few years later purchased also the real estate. And so he played way more golf, and I did way more chiropractic, and we have just had a very, very blessed life in this community here in Ohio since.
That's fabulous. So now you said something that I really got to zero back in on. So many associateships end on a horribly sour note. But it sounds like yours continued to grow and mature, and you purchased the practice. Now, I don't know if the senior doctor is still living or if he has passed. But what was your relationship like after you purchased the practice and you're the owner?
You know, he passed away a year ago in December.
Oh, I'm sorry.
At the age of 93.
God bless him.
I took care of him in the practice. He was in to be checked on the regular. We would go to dinner, he and his wife, and me and my wife went to dinner once a month. He was kind of like my chiropractic father. Just such a blessing in our lives. I went to finance the practice, and he said, hang on, I'm going to finance it. So we had the business evaluated by a third party. Here's the value of the practice. And then rather than me going to the bank and taking out a six-figure debt on top of the six-figure debt I already had,
sure,
we drew up an amortized schedule, and he was the bank. So every month, you know, he got the first fruits. I paid him for the practice for our agreed upon amount. The schedule was amortized. Now, here's a weird thing. This is back in I started with him in 1990. So this is 1995. The centennial year of chiropractic is when I bought the practice from him. And it was a traditional practice in that there was third-party pay, there was insurance, there was workers' compensation, there was some motor vehicle, yada, yada, all of that. And this is when managed care was just becoming in vogue, at least here in Ohio.
Oh, yeah, I remember.
And in fact, I think that's kind of why he wanted to retire. He probably retired a little sooner than he should have, just because of the burden of managed care and contracts and competition. And you remember this. I know you were in practice then. It changed the flavor of chiropractic from each of us being colleagues to, in many ways, we became competitors, because these plans only limited the number of docs that could participate, and they changed the fee structure, and you're going to make it up in volume, of course, because we're going to send you all these patients, which I found to be a load of trash.
Absolutely.
So when I bought that business, I cut ties with all third-party pay and went to a direct pay practice in 1996.
Wow. So you were an early adopter of an all-cash practice.
It just didn't feel good to me. Like I said, I watched it run him out of the game. I watched the way it forced our colleagues to behave. And I just knew that I was either going to make it on my own, and we're going to have a direct pay cash practice, or I was going to have to go get another job or something, you know. But at the end of the day, I ended up not only, and he kind of freaked out because he was the bank, right? He was like, if this doesn't work, you're in deep water, and so am I. Yeah. And I said, no, doc, this is going to be, failure is not an option.
And so obviously you made it work. Let's transition and fast forward a little bit. So Tell me about the practice now. What makes the practice unique in today's world?
Well, and again, we started as a direct pay practice, so that can be a bit unique. It is all upper cervical. We use a technique that's called NUCA. We don't have any connection to any insurance companies. Our goal is to provide care that exceeds the value of the exchange. So our goal is I assume that everybody coming is going to be a lifetime spinal care patient, because they're smart people. We only let smart people in. And so I assume they're going to understand the value of subluxation management from that point forward in their lives. I also understand that they're probably going to want to refer their family and friends. So we have a pretty much direct pay referral-based waiting list. I don't know if that's unique to maybe some of your other listeners, but one of the things that I knew a long time ago is that you can kind of have the practice and the lifestyle of your dreams, and so we just kind of set it for that pace. Or I don't know if you want to talk about numbers or volume or any of that. I know you have interviewed lots of docs and have lots of flavors.
But give the audience some idea of what kind of weekly volume you see, and in round numbers what the office would collect on an annual basis.
We've been super blessed. And one of the biggest things that has the COVID lockdown, pandemic, whatever you want to call it, we have had a 7-figure practice each of the last 4 years. We had a high 6-figure practice before the lockdowns, and we have been a 7-figure practice since the lockdowns. We see somewhere between 250 and 300 people a week. We work 4 days, Monday through Thursday, so every week is a 3-day weekend. We enjoy just a fabulous staff. My team is awesome. I treat them like they're my own kids or my own family, and they treat me the same way. We'll have a lot of fun. We do fun things in the office, different, whether it's theme days or whether it is patient events in the office for, just fellowship and camaraderie. But it's just my thing. It's just what we do. I don't know if it's unique or what.
Yeah, I absolutely love that. It's funny, having spoken to so many docs over so many years with the different things that I've done, what I saw absolutely across the entire United States, during the COVID crisis, was the practices that were subluxation based thrived.
Yes.
The practices that were pain based suffered, closed temporarily, some permanently. When you understand, chiropractic the way that you and I do, the patients get it. They want it no matter what, come hell or high water, and they're coming in because they know it's what they need for their good health.
They completely understand. And that was such a validating thing. Our numbers did not wane. We didn't close for a single day. We didn't wear masks. It was the most normal experience for our patients through that whole 2 or 3 or 4 year stretch. And our numbers grew. I have to attribute that to the fact that our people have a valuable understanding of how their nerve system works and what controls their immune function, and they're better off without nerve interference than they are with it. It was very validating to be able to say, not only are we staying open, we're thriving in this process.
Terry, you just spoke absolute gold. I hope everybody can just drink that in. When your patients understand they're better off without nerve interference, their health is better, their life is better. And that's what chiropractic is at the core.
That's called chiropractic. Yeah. It's so funny when you say what's unique about that. I don't think of us as unique. I think of us as just applying the principles and sharing what we've learned and helping people understand that it's a smart choice.
Exactly. It's the best choice. Okay. So you and I know that. Let's keep moving forward.
Okay.
So, the name of the interview is My 3 Keys of Success.
Okay.
Let's start talking about your first one, and I'm sure we'll transition very quickly into the second and third.
Well, it's super simple for me. The first key for success in my world is to decide what you want. And also it's important to understand that you got to define what success means to you. Everybody's going to have a very different, maybe, definition of that. And it may revolve around numbers and it may revolve around economics, but it can't revolve around only that. So I encourage people to create in their mind first and then on paper the practice and the lifestyle of their dreams. What should it look like? If nobody could tell you no, and if money was no object, what would your practice look like? So number one for me was that, I joined a practice that had a certain model and a certain mindset. And from that, I was able to say, here's what I'll keep and here's what I'll discard. And it became the practice that I wanted, not the practice that had been created, before I arrived.
So I'm curious, do you think when you say decide what you want your life to look like, so do you mean in generalities or to the nth degree as specific as you possibly can? Which way does your brain go?
I am a very specific generalist.
Mm-hmm.
In that, I think you can pin it down to the hour and the time in the day, and how far would you drive, and what would you wear, and what would the colors be on the wall, what kind of music would you listen to, what would you say to people, who would you attract, who do you want to serve. You can pin those things down as definitively as possible. And then if you miss any of it, you're still closer than you were before you started. So I'm a huge fan of just kind of deciding, like, here's the life I want. From a relationship standpoint, from a patient management standpoint, it's hard for me to separate my life from my work, because we're doing our life's work.
Oh, exactly. Exactly.
And I think it's fascinating for chiropractors I think there's a difference between being a chiropractor and doing chiropractic things.
Oh, absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? Like there's a difference. And so, I'm not a chiropractor when I'm in the office. I'm a chiropractor all the time and forever.
Yeah.
And so you see the world through a different lens in that regard. So, sharpen the pencil and decide what you want. If nobody can tell you no, what would your life look like, and where would your practice fit in that?
I love that. In fact, in the first season, there was a whole episode on goal setting, and I said so many of those same things because those are just the laws of success. It's just how it is. So I love that. So if deciding what you want is the first key, what's your second one?
2 for me is going to be surrounding myself with people who are smarter than me. I'm not a genius level thinker, right? And so at the end of the day, I'm going to look for people who are either already doing what I want to be doing, or who are strong where I'm weak. Mm-hmm. I need somebody. My office manager's been with me now 27 years, and she's like my right arm. She can finish my sentences, but she is the detail person. I can be the big vision. I can say, here's how we want it to feel and look and taste and smell. And she's the person who's going to make sure we got the right amount of paper clips, and we've got the right amount of, everything detail oriented. So I think and my wife is that person as well.
Mm-hmm. That's perfect. So but your office manager is not your wife.
Correct.
All right. I
have surrounded myself with people that are much smarter than me in that regard, including my wife.
That is fabulous. I love that. Okay. So decide, number 1, surround yourself with people who are smarter or who have done it already. What's number 3?
I'm a huge fan of less is more.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Well, from a business or from a chiropractic standpoint, like I said, we have an upper cervical office, so it's pretty rare that I'm going to contact anything below C1. And I know that I've got friends and colleagues who are adjusting everything from ankles and earlobes to toe joints and every spine joint. And I think that helping people understand the value of subluxation management is very different than whacking and stacking and hoping they hit all the high spots. So I'm a huge fan of less is more, both from a chiropractic adjusting standpoint and from a how do I run my business standpoint. It doesn't have to be flashy. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It has to be streamlined, and it has to be efficient.
Yeah, and it just has to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, love that.
Systems in place.
Excuse me. All right. So my next question then is, look, you've got decades of experience. You came into a practice that was running a certain way, and you took that, built on it, changed it, and made it wildly successful. And man, good for you. That's phenomenal. I think everybody would applaud you. My question is, because I ask everybody this question, do you think that in today's world, a doc who gets right out of school, or a doc who's in practice but just isn't successful yet, is it still possible for them to become a huge success?
Absolutely. Well, actually, I think, if I'm a doc who's not feeling very successful, I think it's important for people to understand that the practice you have currently is a perfect reflection of who you are currently. And that means your decision making, that means your action steps. Everything you got right now is perfect for everything you've done right now. If you want something different, you're going to have to learn to do something different. You're going to expose yourself either to new people or new systems or new ideas, or, if you want something different, you got to change something. And so at the end of the day, success has got to be defined by you. You have to decide what that means to you. And if you don't like what you're currently experiencing, then you got to either surround yourself with other people who are already doing what you'd like to be doing, or you've got to get uncomfortable enough to move in a direction that takes you where you want to go.
Right.
So yeah, I think there's no excuse for not being successful, unless all you're doing is making excuses for not being successful.
Right. It's the old adage: if you do the same thing in the same way, you're gonna get the same result.
And there's nothing wrong with that if you're happy with it.
Right.
If you're exactly, one of the things we got to the end of last year, and my goal for the coming year, 2025, was to shed my practice by 10%.
Mm-hmm.
And then, and because everybody can look at their schedule and say, okay, that's a person who probably needs to be in a different office. That's
Mm-hmm.
a person that I know somebody else will enjoy serving more than we do, and their needs will be better met somewhere else. And so, we're always looking to refine what we do, and we're always looking to create space for more people who fit in our version of reality. And so there's really no reason for anybody to be struggling where they are. Chiropractic is this magical thing to be able to share with as many people as you'd like. You just got to decide what you want it to look like for you.
Yeah, exactly. I love that. All right, so our time is running short. I've got to transition and ask you just a couple more questions. And,
Sure.
and you started to touch on this earlier, and I so wanted to jump in. You mentioned defining business success. How do you define business success?
For me, success in any regard is going to be, your business success is going to be a reflection of who you are as a person. For me, I think there's this sweet spot between finding where your wants are versus your needs. I think there's a big deal for waking up each day knowing God's got a purpose and a plan for you. And for me, success in my practice is having just the unconditional love and the respect of the people that I have unconditional love and respect for. And if you can do that and create value in the marketplace, because the marketplace is where business rubber meets the road.
Sure.
If you're bringing value to the marketplace, then the exchange will be more than fair to you, and you'll be successful in your wildest imagination. If you can't bring value to the marketplace from a business standpoint, it's probably not as fair to expect success.
Yeah. I love that definition. So if that's business success, what is your definition of personal success?
Again, kind of the same. They blend, because who we are business-wise is who we are person-wise. But it's important to me to have the love and the respect of people that I love and respect. There's plenty of people who will be able to grind your gears. There's plenty of people who will not agree with your version of the world or the reality that you've created, and I'm okay with that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't need to be everybody's cup of tea. But it is important to me that my girls, my family, my people, my staff, and the people that I serve have the same love and respect for me that I have for them in the process. And like I said, from a business standpoint, all you got to do is translate that into value in the marketplace.
I love that. So final question, I promise, because I know we're running over on time. So if a doc is listening to this and has heard what you have to say and go, man, you know what? That's it. I'm ready to become successful.
Mm-hmm.
Terry, what's their first step?
Change your mind. If they change their mind, if they're ready to become successful, then I would say it's time to look at all your systems. I would look at my habits. What time do I go to bed? What time do I get up? Am I exercising? Am I doing the things that I'm trying to coach people on doing? Am I being the best example for my patients and my people that I'm trying to create for them? One of the things that is in my office, my patients will never be healthier than me. So I'm going to work out 4 and 5 days a week. I'm going to pay attention to the things I eat. I'm going to make sure that I'm filling my brain with spiritual things that are consistent with my reality. So becoming the example that you want to create for other people, I think is imperative. And I would start with just the small habits. How do I get up? What do I do? What do I allow into my heart and my mind? What am I putting into my mouth? Become the example that you want to create for the people that you serve.
I absolutely love that. Wow. Terry, this has been absolutely fantastic. Dr. Terry McCoskey, I want to thank you so much for taking the time and sharing your years in wisdom and knowledge. It has been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast today.
Robert, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure to be with you as well. And I'll just look forward to our connection, our relationship in the future.
Absolutely. I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. If you're enjoying the podcast, I'm going to ask you to do two things. Number one, go to the show link, which is right on your mobile device, usually in the upper right-hand corner, and copy the show link and share that with one or two other chiropractors, or as many as you want, that you think could get some value from the show as well. For the Love of Chiropractic is all about helping more people to be as healthy and successful as possible. And if you're new to the show, I say welcome to the family. We're now in 5 continents. I'm glad you're here and decided to spend some time with us. All right, and that's our show for today. If you have a question about today's show or your own practice, feel free to reach out at theloveofchiropractic.com. Before making changes to your practice, be sure to seek legal advice regarding those changes and regulations in your state. For the Love of Chiropractic is an RGF production, all rights reserved. And thanks for listening. Original music provided by Hunter Rich Music.